милисарисимасат тангусисорнернеқаллуккару оқарниангисааннарпуга манитсуми ингерллуарпу алкуа қақуа аллартинниарама қақуа аллартинниарама
наамаиттартоқарниссаалу поомистари миккиссаатиинеқар
утаққанерунаарма симаанаагитсо
наапитсиалуартарпунга уааймаат акисуниартарнэрму ас инеқонартариақарпутимигиттараартаамаат уффалумани мулиторлусоқарнэрму
мака нитаангортитсоқарумаапоқақугаппина
аақаммата персерсоралуартаанга уанга миниуссасақарниарму
тасса илуиаа киккуслунни таана эққарсаатиинакуга соорнамми алланут сумақарлуиннартуга периарфиссагуяртут тариақартут соорлуссиулигуарма таамаассамас
Sjachset.
Clip as our next project, I was approached by another two Maltese filmmaker from his same kind of age, more or less, that also wanted to adapt Rajata Clip. It seems like this short story had a big impact on the students that had to study it in their secondary school education. So there was quite some value into adapting it. As a company, Shadina, we like to adapt Maltese literature a lot because although we don't have a history of filmmaking really in Malta, we have a literary history which is very strong. In fact, it was our second adaptation. Since then, we've done another adaptation, one based on Clara Soppardi's Camilla, and we're working on another 8 at the moment in collaboration with Sayetta Productions. So It's a
And
big
you
part.
worked in collaboration with the National Book Council at some point as well.
Yes, we did the adaptations of Emmanuel Mifsud's Laqma Mara Morbi
Mhm.
and Claire Sopardi's Camilla with financial support from the National Book Council.
Mhm.
And Ratchet Clip was financed in part by the Malta Film Fund from the Malta Film Commission.
Mhm.
It was incidentally rejected by well, not rejected. It didn't win the competition of the National Book Council when we applied. with
Otherwise,
it.
Shadina would have had a bit of a monopoly on that.
Well, we actually applied less than less than half the amount of times it was open. But yes, it lost to another project, which worked quite well as well. And we decided to then apply to the Malta Film Fund, and they accepted the project.
Mhm.
And thanks to them, it got made finally.
And which year was this? When did the process start? When did you apply for the film fund and start producing the film?
I think that we originally started working on the project in 2000, either late 2015 or early 16.
Okay, so that was quite a long time ago. It's been
Yes. We applied for funding in 2016, I believe, and got a grant from the 2016 Film Fund.
Mhm.
We went into production in late 2017. Post-production took quite long. It took most of 2018.
Mhm.
And then we started sending it out to festivals early this year, late last year.
Mhm.
It was also co-produced by a small company in Cyprus called Geek Octopus Films.
Mhm.
They handled the editing process. And it was quite an interesting process when you have an editor who, first of all, doesn't understand the language,
Mhm.
but is also...
So this film is completely in the Maltese language.
Yes, the
yes.
film is completely in
with
Maltese,
English subtitles, obviously.
with English subtitles, and soon French as well for other festivals.
Fantastic.
And our editor does not understand a word of Maltese, but having him being removed from Maltese culture also meant that we had a questioning eye in the editing process. And he would sometimes ask us questions which we thought were the most obvious. But
Okay.
it made us realize that some things don't translate well, because
Okay.
people who are not brought up in Maltese culture might not understand.
And that's
why.
important if you want to apply for film festivals, for example.
Exactly. I think it's important throughout the filmmaking process to make sure that the elements in the film are understood by a wider audience. For example, one of the things that I find a lot of European and other international audiences struggle with Maltese culture is how Maltese men tend to be hopeless without their wife, especially older men. For us, it's normal that our grandparents, or in some cases even our parents, are not able to cope living on their own. And I've had foreign filmmakers tell me, like, how could I like this character? He's abusive towards his wife. Like, abusive why? He expected her to cook and clean for him. And for us, it's normal.
Yes, we
But
take it for granted.
Exactly. And so then you have to find ways to make it seem normal, to make this character seem more approachable and understandable to a wider audience. So that really worked in our
Okay,
favor.
we'll come back to more production. So, Samuel, what are the themes that struck you most from the short story it was adapted from, and that you wanted to communicate on screen? What is maybe the first thing, like, but
So,
emotionally perhaps, or
yeah.
thematically?
For me, what was fascinating was this the obsessive element of this man, that the wife represented some form of like blockage for his obsession, and that he was interested in dogs and wanted to, get dogs and make them a part of his life, but it was always blocked. And once she was eliminated from the scene because she died, then he entered the world of dogs and let them like take over completely. So like what was interesting is the obsessive element and that it takes over him and the chaotic components that come out of that. Those are for me the themes.
And how did you connect with the main character? He's at the end we see him as a lonely man, sort of, and we can see that he's finding solace in the comfort of the dogs. We can see his loneliness. It's very well portrayed, I think, and the deterioration of his life as well.
Yeah. I used obviously my life from different places. Like for example, what I'm thinking about is I'm a teacher as well as a filmmaker and painter and stuff, and I used the feeling of being around, you know, like 20, 30 kids as the dogs for me. Like when one child asks for, can I have this? Then everyone says, okay, that's my cap. Now I can do that. Then someone asks for a layer above. So like the dogs, you know, you start from here and it keeps going, it keeps going. So that was one element that I drew my knowledge from to apply to the film. Obsession and is something that I find myself continuously doing, like getting into something and diving in excessively and destroying myself, being exhausted and stuff like that. I need to step out and say, bro, chill out, man. And what else? So yeah, and the chaos, that's like one of the most interesting things for me, like something I paint constantly about and I'm thinking about all the time. So the movement of the dogs is represented even in the paintings that I make, like just this thing and the camera movement. So I used as many tools as I possibly could, even with the lighting and everything, to push that fundamentally.
Fantastic. And maybe one of you can tell me how you cast your actors, perhaps, how the process went.
How we cast the actors. I mean, it's tough because like there isn't like a million people out there, so it was difficult. We made a number of calls. We looked at different pages on Facebook and stuff like that to see who was interested in having a look at the script. You had a few contacts that you knew from previous projects.
I think that it's, as Samuel said, there isn't a great wealth of actors in Malta, and especially when it comes to older characters, it can get even harder to cast. Luckily, my parents were involved in theater back about 30 to 40 years ago, and they still had, my mom still remembers a number of the actors they used to work with. So whenever I have to cast someone who's over 60, I always turn to her and say, okay, can you imagine someone like this? Who can you recommend?
She becomes the casting director.
She helps a lot. And she immediately told me, okay, so for the guy, you should try Philip Mitzi. And for the woman, you should try Marianne. Can't remember her surname right now. Sorry, Marianne.
Hello, Marianne.
And we had we called in some actors we had from previous projects as well. And
they worked very well. I think they were very well cast. So
they worked very well.
Their performances were great as well.
And then obviously Samuel had a session with all shortlisted actors to see how they respond to his directions and how they connect with the script and so on. So I think the process overall took about a month or two. Between getting in touch with different people, trying them out, seeing what works best. I think that although there aren't a lot of older actors that are selective, some of them are exceptionally well trained. And you'll find some semi-retired actors in Malta in their 70s or even older that actually toured, you know, all over Europe back in the 60s and 70s.
And nobody knows because at the time there were no social media to
exactly and
tell the whole world what you did.
It's a kind of a period in Maltese theatre that's somewhat forgotten sometimes.
Yes.
And it's quite unfortunate because there's a lot of strong talent.
I agree. Yes.
That younger filmmakers don't have access to or contacts with, unfortunately.
Because there is also not a lot of TV and film things we can connect with and watch.
It's even difficult.
It's not easily available. Yes.
Finding a list of productions that were put up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, unless you know someone who was involved in the scene.
Yes.
It's hard to connect. I mean, even recently I was reading some of the plays written by Dr. Alfred Sant, our ex-short-lived PM and opposition leader. And some of his theatre work is amazing, but it's mostly forgotten by younger generations, unfortunately.
Okay.
So that might be something to work on as a society and as filmmakers.
That's a very good point to put out there. Okay, so we are coming to the end of the interview. Let's give some practical information. When can the people out there come and watch your film? Okay,
so the first screening, this will be our national premiere, is tomorrow. That's Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the Valletta Campus Theatre.
Campus Theatre, that's the ex-MITP for anyone who knows it that way.
The screening is part of Program A of the Valletta Film Festival Short Film Selection, and it will be followed up with a Q&A. So anyone that has questions or wants to have a chat with the team should come tomorrow. Also, the cast, most of the cast will be present, some of the
Fantastic.
crew. Even we're hoping that Oliver Frigid, the original author of the short story, will be present as well. So, yes, please do join us and watch the film and stick around for a chat
Fantastic.
afterwards.
One last comment from somewhere. Is it going anywhere? Does it have any plans? Are you still applying for festivals? And
Yes, there's a number of different funding opportunities, both from the Malta Film Fund and the Malta Film Commission and the Arts Council, that we're going to be making use of or tapping into, and that's great because there's the support that we need for that. Because otherwise, if you just make a movie and then it just stops there, it would be a mistake. So at least there's the assistance to take it further.
fantastic. Any further comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
Come,
so
by
come
force.
watch Ir-Raġel tal-Klieb, directed by Samuel Sultana and produced by Shadina. There's Martin Bonici here, so go watch it. 5 o'clock, Valletta Campus Theatre. So we have the next guest here. Thank you both.
Thanks.
So, hello. Thank you. Hello, Paul. How are you?
Not bad,
Okay.
thank you.
So we have with us Paul Portelli, who is a known actor here in Malta, but also he is the director of the short film Vitor, which is
Yep.
showing as part of
Program B.
Program B. We will give you the times later. So, Paul, tell us how it all started. Tell us something about the film and how you
Okay.
why you wanted to make this film, perhaps.
Okay, so I'm not a filmmaker. Mainly, I've worked in theatre, and I've always been a very reluctant director. But this film, in particular, was part of the course I'm following at the moment, the MA in Film Studies, and that's how it came about. But it started from a very real place. The premise, in a nutshell, is this guy leaves his house in the morning for a smoke and a coffee, and he returns to find that a family are living in his house, and it looks like they've been there for a very long time. And it all started because it's based in Birgu, because we were asked to base the story in Birgu. And I was always fascinated by Birgu, and I did a lot of work there, theatre.
I remember we did a
Yeah,
project
yeah.
together, actually.
Very old man with enormous wings and Island of Dreams.
Long time ago, yeah.
And at the time, Birgu was very much part of the Cotonera area. Yeah. Birgu, Bormla, Eastland used to think of them as one area. They were very similar. But all of a sudden, Birgu changed. And it didn't change over years. It seemed to change overnight. It seemed like another planet. Especially compared to Bormla and Isla.
Yes.
So that's where it
Very
started
true.
from. It's when you're living in a place and all of a sudden it becomes something else. How do you react to that? So that's how the film started.
And how was the process of writing it? So going from idea to script.
Well, in our case, we're very fortunate, and I had a lot of help because this is not something I created myself in a way that it's part of a process we follow at university as part of the course. And we had very good script consultants, France and Françoise, and also mentors, somebody to help us out with the photography, cinematography, and also direction. So there was a lot of help in that area.
So it was a
yes,
team
and
effort.
also the other students. We all chipped in. We all helped out. It's a wonderful course, and what's great about it is that it's half theory and half practical. You don't find many courses like that, and it's a course I very strongly recommend.
And how did you work with the other classmates from your master's program? So everyone had their specific role, and you were assigned the role of director.
Because I wrote the script, you also get to direct. Although this year I think they made an exception, but normally the scriptwriter also gets to direct, and somebody is the trainee camera person, DP. One other student was the artistic director. Another one was responsible for sound. So we divvy up the jobs, all the jobs. Another one did production and first AD. That's how it worked out. So it's essentially a student production.
So then, going back to the actual story of the film. So we see this character,
Vitor.
Vitor. How did you choose that name? Is it something a name that you always liked?
Well, I'm not very comfortable with symbolism and metaphors and all that. But if you want to read into it, perhaps Vitor is short for Vittoriosa. You know, so maybe Vitor. Maybe perhaps if you want to read it
And was
like
he
that,
victorious at the end as well?
Vitor maybe stands in for Vittoriosa, for Virgo. You know, the story of Vitor is the story of the city.
And tell us a bit about. So he meets another fellow person, which is. And then he goes back to the apartment, and then comes back out to find a community of.
Not exactly. He leaves the house to have, for his. That's what he does every morning. He's a very meticulous person. He's a craftsman. Perhaps maybe before he used to work at the dry docks, maybe work on the ships. And now he's retired, and he makes puppets. That's what he does now, you know. And he leaves the house one morning, which is what he does probably every day at the same time for a smoke and a coffee. He takes his thermos flask with him. And when he goes back, there's a family living there. And
not a very nice family.
Well, I don't know. I leave it up to the audience to decide.
Well, I watched it and...
I, as much as possible, I try not to make...
of course, yeah. No judgments.
Let
no
the
judging
audience,
the characters.
Let the audience decide.
Yeah.
Okay, and also what perhaps could be interesting about this, it's structured in such a way that you'd never really know whether the flashbacks are the flashbacks, and you know which bit happened before what. You never really know, and you can read it in any which way you like. I think we're giving the audience the possibility to, you know, make up their own minds about how the chronology, of how the story actually happened.
Okay, and I will always ask this question because, as you know, I'm a fellow actress. So, how did you cast the characters, especially the main character, who is Zep Camilleri, who is a very respected Maltese actor who everybody knows here?
Very, very lucky. I was very fortunate to work with Zep. I had always wanted to work with Zep, and this came along, and he, I mean, when it's a student production, you have zero budget. That's one of the conditions and limitations. But he very kindly accepted to take part, and he did a fantastic job.
Yes, he did.
Lovely, lovely job. You know, his humanity. It's Zep. Zep really comes. You know, there's a lot of him in this short story.
Very true. So this was your first experience as a film director. Was it positive enough to make you want to direct another film, or is it just like, nope, very stressful?
But it's a bit ironic, you know, that I'm sitting here today as a filmmaker and director, because even though I've been doing theatre for many years, I always considered myself to be a wannabe actor. You know, I would like to become an actor one day. And in
so
the process,
knows that he already is.
And in the process, you end up doing a lot of stuff which isn't necessarily acting, and one of which I end up directing a lot. And
directing theatre.
Directing theatre,
yes.
And it's also in a way the same thing with this. You know, I mean, if I had to choose, I would always be on the other side of the camera. But what's wonderful about this is that it's good to have a more comprehensive view of the industry, you know, and to see. To put things on a timeline, to widen your perspective and really see how things happen, you know, and it was very, very rewarding and satisfying in that sense.
Would you like to direct again?
Would I like to direct again?
We can leave it open.
Well, the short answer is always I don't know, because given the choice, I would rather act. You know, I would rather be an actor, and that's it. But as always, I mean, if there's no work, I mean, what do? You You direct.
But you've
You
always also.
direct, you write scripts, and you
Yeah.
design stuff. You
But you're
build
quite
sets.
passionate about film as well. So you,
I am very passionate about
and that's
film.
why you
I
started
love-
this masters in film. So
Yes, I
that's
I
where
love
it all
film.
comes from, basically,
Yep.
from your love of film.
Mhm.
So, okay. Would you like to take the film anywhere? Will you apply to festivals?
Well, we've applied because we're also expected to apply, and
Mhm.
we
As part of the process.
As part of the process,
Fantastic.
and it's been it's been accepted already in a festival in Jaipur, India, and next
That's
week I'll be
great.
going to Tunisia. It was accepted there as well, and also VFF, which is
Yes.
lovely. So,
We love
so
it.
thank you VFF.
Thank you, VFF. Okay. So, would you like to add anything else, Paul?
Well, film will be screened tomorrow.
Yes.
Wednesday,
important.
Wednesday the 19th
Mhm.
at 5 o'clock. There's also a Q&A afterwards.
Mhm.
And the day after that at 3
Mhm.
o'clock on the
Thursday?
20th.
Thursday at 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Always at the Valletta campus.
Always at
theatre.
the Valletta Campus Theatre X
But always make sure to check the times as well.
Yes, and if you'd like to hang around afterwards for a chat,
You will be there for both screenings?
Yes.
Yes.
I intend to.
Yes, fantastic. So we urge you to go and watch Vittor by Paul Portelli
Thank you.
as part of a whole program of short films. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you, Antonella.
Fantastic. And now we have our third Maltese filmmaker, Adrian Camilleri. Hello. Hi. How are you?
Good, thank you.
It's the first time we're meeting.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Same here. Okay, so so people here have not seen the short films yet, I believe, right? So the programs haven't been screened yet. So let's tell them something about your film, and then we'll take it from there.
So the film is about.
So first of all, you
Yes.
are the director of the film.
Yes.
Okay.
Editor,
Editor. What else? What were your roles in the film, Adrian?
editor, sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it. I think. Yeah.
Mhm.
And script writer
Script
for the
writer.
voiceover.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the film was part of my graduation film for an MA, an ethnographic and documentary film at
Mhm.
UCL in London.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a documentary about a primer on Maltese folk music, Ana,
Mm-hmm.
with underlying themes of Maltese culture.
Mm-hmm. And were you always interested in this sort of type of Maltese folklore singing, or did it come about as you were studying, as you were doing your master's program?
Being that I'm a musician primarily, I was always interested in music, especially
Mhm.
Maltese music.
What kind of musician are you?
Electronic music.
Mm-hmm.
And
So yeah, the Ana was always there as an
exactly,
interest.
and
Mhm.
with I have an anthropology background.
Mhm.
So, and I was doing fieldwork with Annea.
Mhm.
So, sorry.
And that's when you
Yes.
yes. Okay. And then the film also follows a journey, but it also experiments a lot with the form as well. So it's not a linear, and there's
No,
also.
not at all.
So
Yes.
explain to us, to the audiences,
It's
how maybe stylistically how you went about this documentary.
It's hard to say because, it's my seventh short film,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's the fourth
Mhm.
short film that is being shown at the now two audiences.
audiences,
And
okay.
Like the
Mhm.
form, I always experimented with the form,
Mm-hmm.
so can't really explain.
Especially
how it comes about.
the editing is.
Yeah,
There's a lot
exactly.
of sort of composites and.
Yes.
Mhm.
Superimpositions,
Superimpositions,
metaphors.
mhm.
Yes.
You also interviewed the musicologist Andrew Alamango,
Andrew Alamango,
and
yes.
he's known to be the sort of main exponent of the Maltese folk singing called Ana. How did you come across him? And was he an important part of your film?
Yes, he was a lot. He did on 2018. He did a theater with Teatro Malta.
Yes, Il-ħana Mitlufa,
Il-ħana
Lost
Mitlufa,
Voices.
exactly.
It was a theatre piece.
Yes, I
Mhm.
went to watch that and contacted him afterwards.
Mhm.
Yes, it was.
So
willing
that's
to
when it
take
all started. That's where the spark started.
Exactly. No. Yes. With Andrew, yes.
With Andrew, okay.
Yeah.
And then you interviewed him also on camera and...
Yes, I spent like half a day at his place in Gozo and interviewed him, and then it ended up in the edit. We hear his voice, we don't see him in the film.
Yes,
But
exactly.
That's one compromise that I had to make.
Why was that? Why was that a compromise? He didn't want to appear on camera?
No. Because he had this a lot of important and very nice and informative memorabilia, and I
That we
don't
see
like
in the
I
film.
don't like straight-on interviews.
Yes. It
and
works very well, I think, in the film, the way it's filmed, and the fact that we
Yes.
don't see him actually works, I think.
I think so too. Yes, and it's not that academic, at least. Although he talks about, he gives us a lot of information about Anna, and he's the driving force, I think.
There are also a lot of other sort of traditional elements, Maltese traditional elements in the film as well. And that must come from your ethnographic and anthropological background as well.
Yes,
So
and
there is a lot of
Maltese.
that. And being Maltese. So
Exactly.
that's what you wanted to portray
Yes.
in the film, like a part of
Yes,
you and
I
who
had-
you are. And
I had to keep in mind because my first audience were going to be foreigners. So I always had that at the back of my head. How to explain, for example, some Maltese elements, even Anna music. So I had to keep that in mind
And how was that received?
very well.
Very well. Fantastic.
I've been told I wasn't there for screening.
So the film is called Lil din l'art Rabiata.
Yes.
Okay. So it means, you translated the title basically as O Land of Wrath.
Yeah, it was translated for me.
Okay. And so why is this land
the title
full
came
of
about.
rocks?
I was talking to Oliver Frigieri,
who was already mentioned in the
exactly
previous film,
yes,
retrospective?
and he's always talking about the land and like going on tangents about the land underneath, how it's not explored, and because it deals with Maltese, in a way it deals with Maltese landscape too, and Maltese culture.
It's you used a few metaphors as well. You mentioned already as well, and
Yes,
I think
yes, yes.
that's it comes across in the film as well.
Good.
That there are different levels to the film, not
Yes,
just what we're seeing.
exactly different layers of Maltese culture too. But I think it's for the audience then to decipher. I don't know. I'm not good at explaining them in
That's
the
fine.
movie. Maybe.
So we hope that the audiences will go and watch it. Can you tell us the times that it is screening? It is
It's
part of program
D.
D.
Wednesday at 9.
So Wednesday at 9 at the
9, yeah.
Valletta campus theatre,
Valletta campus, yes, and on Saturday I think after hour at 1.
and on Saturday at 1 o'clock again at the
Yeah.
Valletta campus theatre. And Adrian, will you be there? So you will be there doing a Q&A for the at the first screening,
Yes,
for sure.
For sure.
Fantastic. So anyone who's curious can ask questions. And will you be there for the second screening as well? If there
Yes,
are
probably.
audience
I'll
members.
manage after the master class of Bellatar.
There is, yes. So that's another thing we can mention, the masterclass of Bellatar as part of the VFF. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Where would you like to take your film after the VFF? What is its journey?
No idea, but we'll see. Yes. Thank
We
you.
will see. Thank you. Thank you for being with us, Adrian.
thank you very
for
much.
sharing your thoughts. Okay, so we have the fourth Maltese film. Do we have Fabrizio Alul here? There you are. Yes, join me. Hello, Fabrizio. We've never met. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. Thank you for coming. So, your film, Fabrizio Alul is the director, but also will explain all the different roles of a short animated film called Filfla, which is a very small island. It's like probably the fourth island, the Maltese archipelago. But I'm sure you will explain a bit further. What made you choose to make a film about this teensy-weensy island
Yeah, I mean, it
of
came
Malta?
pretty much, I know.
Put it close to your mouth.
Sorry, it came
Yes.
pretty much by accident, sort of. I mean, me and my wife we have this common hobby of kayaking, and one of our favorite places is Arlapsi. And
Mhm.
we're in front of Arlapsi, you see Vilfla, and you know, I mean.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right.
Yeah. Put it close,
Um,
close to your mouth, so that everyone here can hear.
So, anyways, we have this hobby that we share. That we go kayaking there, and one of our favorite spots is Arlapsi. And you know, in one of our trips, you know, you keep seeing a Vilfla, you know, there in front of you, and just I mean, the idea started from there, and sort of what if I mean, it wasn't sort of destroyed, and I kept just imagining that there would have been probably like a small community that at the time I was also living in Sengli, and at the time there was there's still the ferry, so I kind of imagined that there would be like some sort of a commuting between Arlapsi or Azuria to Vilfla, and that's really where it started off. Then it took around 2 years to finish from concept to actually just pressing the export. And it sort of evolved, the team, but it started out from this idea of imagining like a small community and kind of how it would work out from Arlapsi and sort of like a community. So I sort of imagined it. I imagined the whole film as sort of like a mirror image of Arlapsi, and it's quite short. So I mean, if you
So we can tell people who don't know perhaps that Vilfla is uninhabited. It's abandoned. It's also illegal.
Yes. That's why I
to
kind
go
of
on
started
the
exploring
island.
this kind of imagination of because at least with the role of animation, you can explore more a fantasy. So I started kind of thinking about this community, how it would be, I mean, how they would have this sort of access to Vilfla, and then sort of started kind of diverging, going into tangents of multi-smiths and folk, and then sort of I started also to understand a little bit briefly the connection and the legend behind Vilfla, how it's connected also with the village of Ma'luba, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
you can explain to us the So first of all, the short is obviously an imagined story. So
yes,
Vilfla is not inhabited, but we see an inhabited Vilfla, and there's a lot of different elements.
Yeah, I mean, I started imagining it, if today, sort of, I mean, if it was, if there was like a small community there, and with a connection to Arlapsi. But then I started looking a little bit more into it. I mean, not really in that much depth, but at least to understand a little bit the story behind it, but also the legend. And sort of, it's connected with Ma'luba, which is a sinkhole just outskirts of Arandi. And kind of the legend says, I mean, briefly, that Ma'luba was inhabited by evil men, and somehow I think something happened. It was destroyed, and from the debris of it, then a Vilfla formed. So anyways, I started.
So it fascinated you. This myth fascinated you.
Yeah, and so then again, I mean, it started out with this sort of idea, then it evolved. So it's kind of. There isn't very much a strict design. It's very much organically how it evolved. So then it started having this sort of creature, and then these spirits that inhabit Vilfla. So it's sort of, it has kind of like two, how would you say it? I mean, like two visions. Let's say at the daily where you just commute and you go there, then sort of at night it turns to something else. So, I started kind of to work a little bit more with this idea of what if, if it is there, but it's, but it's not there. So, and, the idea of myths and Maltese folk.
And your studio is also called Vilfla Studio, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and this sort of, by studio, it's me really. It's
yes.
Let's
your
not,
company.
Make it more big. It is. But it sort of it evolved around Vilfla. Because
what is this your first short animated project?
Yeah, it's really my first thing in anything to do with
So what
animation.
is your background usually?
My background, I actually come from art history. So I worked in as a lecturer. I also did, and now I work in communication. I also do. I'm more of a visual artist in a traditional sense, like drawing and painting always. And I wanted sort of with this, I wanted to explore a little bit more of a challenge, a personal challenge. If I wanted to do an animation, I'm a big fan of animation, kind of like grew up since I was a child. And
Yes,
now
we all, I think as Maltese, we
Yeah.
all grew up with Japanese
Yeah, exactly.
anime cartoons, which were dubbed
Yeah.
in Italian, which we used to watch on Italian TV.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So,
we were all fascinated by them.
Yeah, so if you see a little bit, the style is heavily influenced, from it. I wanted to keep that sort of genre. If I wanted, let's say, if I kind of to transplant something into the Maltese, and I wanted to see if it
So you took
really
something from your
worked out.
childhood, and
Yeah,
the main
exactly.
character is a child, so
Yes,
maybe it
exactly.
is you. We don't know.
Anyway, it's part
Well.
it's part of the story. I mean, it's sort of. I know there's this idea of boy and the idea of boy and childhood, how it mixes with this whole theme, sort of. So this was really my first, really, and I have absolutely no experience in animation. Still, really don't have. And when I approached this, I wanted to see how to make an animation. I thought, what are my strengths, which is drawing and painting, and more of a tradition. And I wanted to retain that part. I know with animation it can get very complex with rigging. There was a learning curve which I didn't really want to go through. So I started to see, how they used to make the first, the 30s or whatever, like the Walt Disney first animation. And I got a little bit inspired, before they didn't have, this sort of software and rigging and, how complex it because animation. They were very much a tradition. So they used to have the cell animations, like, pretty much like stop motion. I don't know if you're familiar. But it's just one drawing after another. And I thought, well, it's a lot of work, it's a pain in reality, but I can do that. I can do a drawing and I can make a drawing and after another move. So I kind of sort of kept that concept into Filfla. Now what I would love to do is continue to expand a little bit on this theme. I'm preparing some concept work, evolving around the theme of Al-Maqluba, around some of Maltese folk.
And you'd like to do another short.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to do another one. It takes a lot of time. Even
So
it's just
this one took 2 years
Yeah, absolutely.
to do.
If you do everything on your own, yes, it takes a lot of time. I mean, ideally not, but it was good fun. It was a good learning curve, and I would love to expand a little bit more. For
It's
instance,
interesting how you said that you didn't have like a full story to start with, but that it
No.
evolved organically. So and you could see that, I think, in the film, because it does go from one thing to another, but also like the genre. There's a bit of
Yeah.
superhero in
I
it.
mean,
There's a bit of sort of
and,
actual themes, like the destruction of the environment also
yes.
comes into it. So there is a lot to the film. I had to
Yes.
watch it twice, actually, to try and make the different parts.
Probably it's also lack of experience in dealing with filmmaking, dealing with storymakers. It's very challenging just to draw up this story, but I started going to tangents. Some things midway weren't really working out. I mean, the first idea was, for instance, that of a loop. Then I kind of removed it, and it became a bit sort of more linear. In fact, I would love to do another one to continue to expand a little bit on this story, because it ended up having so much themes into it. For instance, I kept a little bit obsessing with the creature.
Yes.
And that's it's taken up from the Maltese folk, is sarang, with the Sekman. I don't know, at least one of the stories that you grow up with is, that you, as a child, that if you stay out night, there's someone with the sack that grabs children. It's part of Maltese legend. And I kept really thinking about it. I kept evolving. I mean, the sack is not actually a sack, but it's actually in his belly. So there's an association with motherhood, whereas motherhood, the one that brings, life, the other one, the Stekman, that actually takes it. So it's this sort of connection. I mean, the theme is also one of grief and loss.
Yes.
That's how
It's quite sad in a way, like even the music that you use. And
yes, and as also, then it sort of connects also with Filfla, because on the theme of what if. In a way, even Filfla was destroyed, it could have had that sort of potential, which, I mean, not, but
at the end, when
it
you say
doesn't.
that it was, it used to be bombarded by the English forces, it makes it quite sad, actually.
So there is that element, but there's also that element, I mean, also some questions, what to do, with idea of afterlife, there's certain themes that I think come as a result of grief and loss. So we also, explore also this theme of the woman part of it, at least, but then it follows up with the boy and sort of his own growth in a way. And, it's also a bit of a genre. So there's also this heroes, this idea of superheroes.
Yes,
and,
we see him at the end. Where would you like to take this film? Are you taking it anywhere else, or do you want to?
Well, so far, this is the second official screening. Briefly, it was a finalist at the French Riviera Film Festival. It's still being submitted to festivals, so let's see. Hopefully, we'll get a couple more of screenings. But for sure, I would love to develop more this idea that I have of Stu to continue to expanding and promoting Maltese folk. I would love to continue expanding a little bit on this creature, how it came about, the backstory of how this creature came about. I'm sort of drafting the idea.
So you already have the basis of your next film.
No, for sure. Now the
Mhm.
idea of Stu, the kind of it grow from the animation, and I would love it to expand.
When did you finish this film?
December 2018.
Okay,
it
so it's
started
already
in January of 2 years before, and it ended up in December. And since then, I'm starting to evolve some. I will soon, I think, after summer, start to release some mini-series in terms of concept works, and hopefully some will lead into animation, bigger projects. So there'll be smaller and larger projects, very much depending on feedback and funding at that point.
fantastic. Okay. Can you remind the audience here and whoever is watching us that when it will be screened, it's part of which program of short films?
Program C, if I'm not
Program C,
mistaken. It
yes,
will
I
be
think it's part of Program C.
on Wednesday 19 at 7.
At 7 o'clock.
At 7
okay,
o'clock.
and that will be at the Valletta Campus
Yes,
Theatre.
exactly.
Okay, and then you will be there for
Yes, absolutely.
questions and answers. So make sure to be there. Okay, Fabrizio, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to add? Just one last comment, perhaps?
Not much. Please turn up for the events, not just mine, but also for the rest. I think
Yeah,
for
I
sure,
think that's,
there's a lot of effort that you put into it, usually with very little a budget or at zero. So, at
There's a
least
lot of,
the
we need to thank
appreciation
all the volunteers
the
as well who
support
are doing
helps out.
great work. So please come. There's a lot of fantastic work here at the Valletta Film Festival. So have a look at the program. It's chock-a-block, full of fantastic activities and fantastic films. So check the program on the website, www.vallettafilmfestival.com, and check the program. There's a lot of details there. Thank you, Fabrizio.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we now have our last guest. Thank you, Fabrizio. We have our last guest for today, who is Sitze Tortsholm Larsen. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. So we have the microphone there.
You did great.
How are you, Sitze?
Very fine, thank you.
Very well. You can have a seat here if you'd like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
I'm not sure if did I say, how do you say your name?
Sisse Torstholm Larsen.
Okay.
I think you did great.
Well, I did my best. And where are you from, Sitze?
I'm from Copenhagen, Denmark. Yeah.
And when did you arrive in Malta?
Yesterday.
Great. So
Yesterday
you're
afternoon.
fresh off the plane?
Yeah. No, I kind of know some of the streets already.
Almost,
yeah.
almost.
Mm.
Okay. So your film is called Winter's Yearning.
Yeah.
Tell us something about the film so that we can understand. It hasn't been screened yet.
It has.
It has. Yesterday.
Yeah.
On Sunday. Yes, it has.
And today.
And today as well.
Yeah, it was screened
Okay.
earlier today. Yeah.
And tell us a bit about the film. What is it about?
What it's about? The film is about something that actually never happens. It's situated on the west coast of Greenland, a small town there. That were a giant aluminum plant was supposed to be built in this tiny town, and with that a lot of money and investment and new jobs that was really longed for. Of course, the population started hoping for this.
Of course, they saw a hope for them.
Yeah, a big hope. But the plant never came. So the film is actually about I think they waited for, more than 10 years for this plant to happen. So the film is about this period of waiting and what happens to people when they wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was supposed to be about one event, and then it happened all throughout these 10 years then. So what made you start it? When did you first film your first images, let's say? When?
I think it's almost 8 years ago.
8 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
And then at the time, you thought that this aluminium plant was actually going to happen in this Greenland small village on the west of Greenland.
Yeah.
And you wanted to make a documentary about the sort of birth of this plant.
Yeah. supposedly 3,000 Chinese workers were supposed to come to this small
Okay.
town with only 2,500 inhabitants.
Mhm.
I'm not the only director. I have a co-director.
Yes, you
Sturla
are a
Pilskog.
co-director. So
Yeah. Sturla Pilskog.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
we both have a background in anthropology, and
Mhm.
we're very interested in this idea of this cultural meeting between the Chinese and the Greenlandic, and what was going to happen. So that's what turned us on in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you travel to Greenland because of this, or did you start your research from before and then traveled to Greenland?
I knew Greenland from beforehand,
Mhm.
and I actually made a film in that particular town.
Okay.
So,
Mhm.
so I knew it already, but we traveled there and wanted to see how this town was reacting towards all this, and I mean it was a big plan, and it would mean dramatic changes for the town. So we were kind of expecting, I don't know, groups for and against, and a lot of debate, and but when we got there, I think the whole town was just cheering. And
So yeah, so basically to explain, they got the news basically, and it was on television, and we could see in the film everyone was watching on the screens, and
that happened. I have to say that happened before we came there.
Okay,
I did. Yeah.
And you got footage from other people.
Yeah, we have archive footage in the film. Yeah,
but it really shows like how happy they were, and that they were ecstatic that this plant was going to be built there, which shows a bit the state, maybe that
because
the lack of hope that they have in a small town.
Yeah, they were really longing for the fish factory, which was kind of the heart of town, and what kept the town going was bankrupt. I mean, yeah. So, but what we were really surprised that we almost met non-skeptic people to this, and and they said, somebody said, yeah, there were one, but he left town now. So that was really surprising.
And everyone else was in favor.
Yeah, more or less. But then when we spent some time there, and we spent a lot of time just walking around, talking with all kinds of people, and then you started realizing that they wanted new schools, and they wanted a culture house, and they wanted, a better life. And then we began understanding why this was so important, and why they wanted it so badly. Yeah.
And how did the process go? So you spent a large amount of time. First of all, maybe we can say something about Greenland. That is the biggest island in the world, basically, but with very few inhabitants.
Yeah.
I was reading like 56,000 inhabitants in this huge mass of land.
Yeah.
And it's very cold. It's the weather conditions are very tough.
In our film, it is. Yeah. No.
Yes.
No, but winter is really winter. But it gets summer there. But of course, it's a very different climate.
Yes. So I was thinking while driving here that the film, like from the freezer to the oven, basically here. So it's like the two extremes, really.
Yeah, I thought about that yesterday when we screened it. Yeah. But another important thing too, I think that people should know is that the cities and the towns in Greenland, they're not connected. So that if you want to go from one town to another, you have to take a flight.
A flight.
Or
That's
a
incredible.
ferry. So I remember one time I was like up in a mountain with a young guy, and just watching from one end of his world to the other. Some people, he had never been out of that town. So it's very
close. It's I think while watching the documentary, you get this feeling that it's so very isolated. And here in Malta, for us Maltese, it's quite shocking, I think, because we live in this very small, overly populated place, and this is the complete opposite on the spectrum. It's very bare, and you can sense this feeling that it's a small place with not much happening. And
I'm glad you say that, because we try to make the pictures work, that you get a sense of place. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so tell us a bit more about the process, like I was saying. So you spent like periods of time over the past 8 years there?
Yeah, so we were waiting for this project to happen along with the inhabitants for a long time. But then we realized that
It's not happening.
It's not going. Maybe it's
When
not.
did that happen? When was there the realization?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it for some years, but at the same time we got interested in this period as well.
And the waiting process.
Yeah, what happens to people when they don't know about the future and they couldn't really do anything about it. They were just waiting, you know.
Mhm.
It does something with people.
And how did you choose your subjects? So the documentary follows mainly 3 characters. So
Yeah.
we see a young girl who works in a fish factory,
Mhm.
right? There's a therapist as well, which gives very valuable advice as well. I was following what he was saying. And then the 3rd character, which was...
The aluminum coordinator.
Yes.
Because
So
they
tell
have
us how...
yeah.
Yeah, exactly, the coordinator of the so-called plant of the
Yeah.
aluminium. Tell us a bit how you ended up sort of focusing on these 3 characters.
Yeah, the aluminum coordinator was that was quite obvious because we were interested in the aluminum project, but we also wanted like a wide span of like generations, and so we wanted somebody young, and this girl I knew from beforehand.
Okay.
Actually we didn't plan to have her in the film, but she was really nice filming and extremely honest, and I think we just fell in love with her, so she had to be there. Yeah. And the therapist, we met. He was actually also the vice mayor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in a small town, you're bound to have multiple roles.
Yes.
Yes.
But that was difficult explaining, you know, that he had another job as well. But and he represented some thoughts that I and Sturla thought was very inspiring and new and valued. So that's why he's in there too. Like yeah.
And it's interesting because these 3 characters manage to get you in the story, and you go on the journey with them, I think. And I think you really empathize with these characters, so I think you really managed to bring that out. And
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then how did you edit the whole the material together to put to have the arc of the documentary then?
Yeah, that was difficult.
Yes, I'm sure.
We spent a lot of time in the editing room, figuring out how these stories were going to roll into each other, and yeah. So I think a lot of the story was shaped there, was found in the editing room, because we could have gone many ways, because 8 years, that's a lot of footage. Yeah,
but I think a lot of documentaries are in a way made in the editing room somehow. I mean, you go on site and you find something completely else than what you thought, and then you come home to the editing room, you watch the footage, and also become something else, I think. I don't know if that was your experience.
Of course. I mean, if we just gone there and did the film we had in our heads, that was that's.
So you had a story in your head, but then obviously.
Of course, you have thoughts, but the story comes alive when you meet people, and luckily they make you see things differently, and they open your mind, and yeah.
Are you normally a documentary maker, or have you done other genres?
I work most of my life as an editor, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is the first feature-length documentary. But
that you co-directed.
Yeah, but me and Sturla has co-directed another documentary as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. And how was it? Would you like to go on site and actually be on site and film again, make another documentary rather than be in the editing room as an editor? How was your experience making this?
Yeah. When I'm in the editing room, I miss meeting people, and you know that special thing that happens, those moments that you can't plan or anything, that just happens in that meeting. So, but it also takes a lot of energy, and sometimes it can be nice to have that other view of things in the editing room, where you're not so attached to the moment that was there. Yeah.
And when did you finish this documentary?
right before it premiered in Copenhagen in March. Yeah, and it was finished. Right before. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And where would you like to take this documentary? Would you like to
Everywhere.
everywhere?
Yeah.
Of course, like all filmmakers, you want to
Yeah,
share.
you make a film because you want to tell people something or have their attention. So so hopefully broadcasters will pick it up. But it just traveled in Greenland and premiered there, and that was very special.
Oh, that must have been interesting. How?
Yeah, maybe the most exciting screening.
Tell us about that. Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't there, unfortunately.
But
Stella was
yeah,
there.
you've heard
and
how it was.
yeah, we actually, when it premiered in Copenhagen, we had all the characters flown to experience that, and that was. I sat and hold the main character. Really, yeah. But it also went really well in Greenland, and I think. Is it 1/4 or 1/5 of town came to see it?
That's fantastic.
Yes, and Kirsten's mother was there at all the screenings, and so it was really nice.
That's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, it brought something else to these people as well. Then.
Yeah. But we made it so that it would work both in Greenland and hopefully also internationally. So yeah.
So yes, it was great to watch and discover this whole new world basically for us, and I'm sure the audiences will go through the same journey as well.
I hope so.
So what else would you like to? Is there anything else you would like to add?
Fantastic film festival. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you for coming. We are very, very happy to have you here.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Will you have time to go and see some of Malta, or do you have to fly back straight away?
I swam in the ocean today. So
That's
that
a
was
very
great.
important thing to do in Malta.
Yes. Yeah.
So we hope you enjoyed the continuation of the Valletta Film Festival, and thank you for being with us, Sitze. Thank you.
Thank you.
Round of applause. So we've come to the end of these talent talks. Today was Monday. We spoke to 4 filmmakers who created 4 short Maltese films, and we also talked to Sitze, who is the co-director of a film which is in competition, documentary. So we've come to the end of the session. Remember to check the program on the website Valletta Film Festival, and we hope to see you as well here in Valletta to watch some films. Our next talent talk is tomorrow at 5:30. Thank you for watching.
Hi, my name is Mikhail Basmajan, and I'm a television, film and theatre actor. Now, I also played the part of a police officer, a Maltese police officer, in a short film called Sheep, where my job was to guard the sheep. Now, that was about 2 years ago, and it first premiered here at the Valletta Film Festival. Now, the Valletta Film Festival is 5 years old, and it is the cinema event that should not be missed. Spans over 10 days, over 100 films, open-air cinema, something you have to come to. Now, when you look at the program of the Valletta Film Festival, you can actually get confused. I mean, it is a great selection, but where do you start? That's why I'm here today. My job is to help you decide. Winners of various festivals, such as the Golden Bear Award at the Berlinale. Other films straight from Cannes. And we will be having the long-awaited full-feature documentary film Maradona. And this is based on 500 hours of yet unseen footage from Maradona's personal archives. Imagine that. A total of 12 feature and documentary, as well as 24 short films, will compete as part of the Cinema of Small Nations competition, eligible only to films from 34 small nations in Europe, Middle East and North Africa. All the feature films shown in the Cinema of Small Nations competition will be shown at the Valletta Campus Theatre. As part of the festival, we also have a section called Islanders, and we have films like Capri Revolution, Twin Flower, a Maltese production called Bahar Zmin, Of Time and Sea, by Peter Sant, starring Ruth Bort and Narsi Kalamata. And as part of the Islander section, we also have a film called Islander. So we are at the Phoenicia Hotel, which is just outside Valletta, and actually this is the place where a lot of actors, directors and producers participating in the festival will be staying. One such director is the famed Hungarian director Béla Tarr, who will be giving a masterclass here on his work as auteur. Another famous director who will be giving a masterclass in directing is Liliana Cavani. This masterclass will be at the Valletta Campus Theatre. And we're going to have some free screenings here for you with some classic films such as Four Weddings and a Funeral, Easy Rider, Vagora, which was filmed in Malta, and also the animated classic Coralie. 14th to the 23rd of June, Valletta Film Festival. It's an event not to be missed. See you there.